so agye atuma ensam ne de ba besom wo na okone fashion centers ahodo ba bi nso te se eye trotro drivers wo mu nyina bie ma yesi nkonwa ye de ba na ensam na dodo na no ye bawuram e wo man Ghana ye parliament na yakwa kofa bi e de afresa ne se oman foto samfo ye wura eye Dr. Kaseo ato forcing wo ba be pie wo ba be hwe oman na komo bosika no de di kan kura ewo yewura John Dramani Mahama na bemu no oba be kenkan e de amaya mahunu se papa waba ane ehwe ne space ahodo wo de aba betena ho we de won hyefita wo ba ye no won hyefita wabosi utu kama yenka coat de ye tetefo ne ne ka coat enti waboni si utu tuntum bi saa ana white was ye na ne tie ne we ya wine won say ye wine ene no so bone kama ye de ba na no pan say awie yi menu abema na kwame wahase wono nso kan obi na tese ye ba behwa budget no nsem ni na ye de bro nana we na de mense dan ko no ma sa
okay
yes eji oyewura to force na ba
waba on
yes
okay let you
and what
wa share tie ne
wine ana say wine no ye a touch of black kakra wom
okay
ana ne bag na ekuta ne ye brown bag ne brown wo pija ye hwe se de na tie ne ade a na uwo nkrata bu ho minya ne tie sansan na anase ye bobo ho a ye ba no na chese party mpanifo ni bi akasa sameja mfimu na akasa na de na sameja mfimu keka ho
se enana ye ready budget na ende na chese efiti da Mahama betena benjwa so no ye be bona kwahoma ma wetumi ahye ni dwumadi ankasa se enti no se efie di akwa mani ho a dada na ne didi aduane ne de ka ne ndrade no enti no tumi se dada no eno an ndisi fo ba ye omudidi ho a enti se no mankasa niska omudi ye dwuma enti afiansa eye fotosign for abepie mu na wo mbrahye bejafie na wo ba be bo Ghana kwa homa na yetumi ehunu se sika we bekọ ahweye we bekọ ahweye we eno no sa na efiri na ekọ na ebehunu se dwumadie no ye di ni sen budget na nkasa se na siti na to de bi ya se ready budget na de budget ni tudwa na se sika na anso a yetumi samba baji biem ka ho finance minister tumi ekura no yetumi samba ebaji sika ni bi di ka ho se ye ka se ye 10 ye wo fie ha month ni mu no ye be 2000 Ghana cedis na momu no ebi mu didi sin bi
na just say ye call budget deficit
yes e was say otumi e ba nti before our budget be e be babonte kwa no di padodo na e ka ho asem obi ti say managing director oda Precious Mineral Marketing Company anon lawyer Samijemfi wakasa de nidaso magana fo chirem se budget we anase akwambo sika aye de eba no ebeso asoya hodo no mom da ye adwuma ntini ne ebeye ne Ghana fo bra wo mo ebra ne di kan ebete so ena ne etoso mienu enso no ebebo enwuma de ato ho na kire se Ghana fo dodo na ebre ena afesu no enyu abakrum Samijemfi ena wo chirem sa na kire se budget no be ebekọ no afi we no say budget no ube ready within 6 months to a year.
Yes.
Na ye hu se na
media budget review.
Yeah, and so the aba.
Say baby akenkan ye ni sisi hefa na akwakodi. Ye be hia skani bi aka ho.
Okay. In fact say January, February, March ni wo mi April, May, June till somewhere July. I was say papa na san ba bi mu. Na obehwe say scanner me de man kofo no omo de aye ne sen ye say o mbebu akonta nche Ghana fo.
Yankotie Samijemfi mra.
Samijemfi okay yankotie Samijemfi mra.
Look, we were very clear in our minds relative to the promises we made to the people of this country in the run-up to the 2024 polls. Our promises were well thought through, and we knew right from the outset that those policies we're promising are pragmatic and implementable. And so we are not going to have any difficulties keeping faith with the people of this country. The change we voted for is here. The hope the people of this country need is here. And I'm very optimistic that by the time because we are going to have a budget that responds to our needs, responds to our aspirations as a people. A budget that will ease hardships, a budget that will create jobs, a budget that will create prosperity for all, and a budget that will respect the social contract that we in the NDC have with the good people of this country.
Nana wote wasi aban papa
University of Ghana UG no very good. Near a student back where kasa already concern bia. I was very happy with the concern na already and what we said and nana pay near me shene say Kaziela to force in eba one man may yes MBB for ba ye no one boy ya kasusuro nti ni sika complaints bia e wo ni budget na wo de ba betu dwanim be say oye very specific na o touch on point be say okay wo de one come here to say me sika ye woni nti allocations no say na be ye sister TV stations na o ka bibi say budget allocations no bebi wo ho budget enko yie pa na one sector budget enko ho no e agriculture. Well, agriculture. Into agriculture, no me sure say this time, you know, photosan for never share now this sika eura agric mu this time pam. Into within a year no yan set target. Osha Mahama vision and what they buy bibi to say akoko nketinketi a. On say e to de bi na se ye ka se farming na. Ghana for do na adwen yo mu say farming no limited to only a year enuma ye dua ye nnuane ye di. But your fish farming, your nkoko farming, preco farming, and farming, dear Nina, farming. Into me, this time,
farming, animal farming. I mean, there be say animal farming. And there be said there was unsaid. Now, animal farming. Now, what you can in now? Mammy on Tiasi, and I name farming. Preco farming, livestock. Mo running point in your livestock and what kind of
NDC for better now young Casano Casaba cope I da NDC for the donano and they say economy and MPP are saying no into to revive no me sure say one bet to me do money actually agric mood this time what I say allocations in the beko agric no and also send ye because nana what's nasi now what check akoko nkete visions ni mo a whole lot to a scapa, but say allocations now go year.
And Nana mene Yura a year in a summer, a yanka say lecture ya or ye economist in Bogatanga University. And then Kasa also was say one, we should increase allocation to district assembly common fund. Said a year 5% at the corner, yan for 10% in court. Say be bit me abuana mensin no. Sika bebem. 2, you are not as also my general view of school feeding programs should be expanded to cover JHS. Not only that, the current rate of 1 to 20 pesos should be taken to 3 Ghana cedis. And also the other kind of honor. Was the companies and SMEs should be given tax cuts as an incentive to employ fresh graduates. And also the other kind of now, as a central government, number one was say, district assembly common fund now, Munyano. You're more 5%, I buy more 5%. You're increasing 10%.
DC is a MMDCE. MMDC for Nankasa, they wish for the first time in Ghana's government. The only time improvement ever me at time I could find the bomb, the only norm. Allocations Nankasa, Nankasan Isha. In this year, and central government in between me, share that I be the amom and it's not the drip machines in a buy no into no so a boy MMDC and you moody because BBC na was a central government na Mamisuma and into now call you cross Sibia Debia Yakwan Debia to a channel into mini economics no a year a dream say I was say allocations in a costro because who say a drip no cry by no yan and say na any central government no and they didn't seek to fuel edigum a MPs nibi into no osha MCs any DC nibi your imagine say we make create some kind of tax be send be obenye sika e dey fuel drip machines no na wo motumi e dey aye adwuma na aboa ne omode ye adwuma o ye mesin potem no into no say omo sika no ekosoro a fine ebeboa am adwuma no mo ye no so potem ne mesin mu so aye kama.
Okay, and now her number 2 so I was say about school feeding program na from KG Erikosi class 6 omunya na emofra ni nya wa ban school ma ye no aduane ma omna yen man cover JHS na afenso no sika a ye twa to abofra bia tiri so say 120 pesos ni increasing ko 3 cedis
say me veteran say na make bibi say ndra student ba ku bi ka say expectations of the kind of budget no. O ka say bi say levy, covid levy, any betting tax no. Nye ni na free ho. Na mum ye free ho no. Wo no ehwe sanka aban ebe create free SHS levy. Yeah, na wo no kasa say e wo say aban etumi create free SHS levy. E free bibim. Fine, and now all the COVID levy echo to Ghana for any man. Ye na ye kase. Dentina ya de any hobby. Now so still a ye jiska wo ho. Previous government na ma ye tia say aban no pese osi vaccine hub kesia se na be ya de bi ba enko ba se de bia na ye dan abrofo no se wo mu no munye se inti COVID levy no in the sense no be bia echo no na eboa na unu se free SHS na se nto so suku fa ne kwa sika no se enya bosia na be kwa kobo ade ewurem yeyi enti ende sei papa ebe se free SHS secretariat jetima na se ni kofes mu anaso be kwa kobo bosia free bebi no de ewurem enti no asem na boy ne kan ye no me ne ya adwen in the sense say un se papa ye se ye increase sika no enko 3 Ghana cedis at least JSS for na because say ye bibi di ama school aban school eba ne say na ye nti no e wo say yes tending no but sisia no e wo say aban etu make sure say wo yi taxes bi di efru a wo say we no e wo say aban ne Ghana for nkasa ne enti ase say me say ye be na wo ka say bi say betting tax no ye
me ba ye bedru ho
okay
I was companies and SMEs say wo small small and medium enterprises you know I was here more tax cut
okay
say tax cut ne say to so mutu ye twitwa so
okay
say na be on betimi anya bia wo so otua 10 cedis ni ete so ma otua 5 cedis 5 cedis na aka no wo betimi aboaboa no e dia for wo na awie school nya nwuma nye no wo dia for mu nwumam
and only a good incentive in your kind no say a folly within Mahama 24-hour economy no in a sense no you be creating more job nipa no be nya adwuma na ye wo hu nti no eno eye pa me how ni say ye cut tax no e de ma SMEs no and as even other bigger companies no what is the assurance say wo mo ebeye nti no this time no aban no say 10% people aban de ma SME na on maintain 10% no nemum no the incentive now de be mo no and say tax cut tax no e maintain na aban no 6 can aban beji no aban emphasis can mum enye incentive and as one fam be enuma okay your amount 10% tax okay ube for ni say who company nam say o tax net 10% no for nipa 5 okay 5 no ye ne sache say for nipa 10 sa nipa 10 na wo wa for no 5 na aba be ka ho no aban ebe boa wo ano be so wasene ama otumi ayeden ahwe etua sa ankofo ne ka ewom na eno so aboa sene be ya because see an answer the nyuma sem no eto bia wu
okay was the central government should tighten its expenditure to allow for prudent public financial management as a ban say e kwan e be fa so amadeji en sika na papa ne tie na red okay
tie red
yes I red the was say ye fiscal discipline
na financial
discipline
chairman of the National Economic Dialogue Dr. Ishmael Yamson wa can the same thing papa isu akin wo hu mre bi atwam na Ghana fo nyina complain say o hwe the previous government na even at the presidency mpo no na nsenya papa ba ye afenyo makin e ka say mi say Mahama ashoda no afa 60 ministers but oko presidency one more employees e gu hono no
edoso
na nsem ko appointment bi ba ya na ye kwampokra ye ntiaze
na the blasters affairs
why appointed to be one affairs what you say intina come say wa sheda cutting the ministries no and na the presidency one na say nkete waso nipa edi agum obeshase
na omodidi nkomo no o de ma memfa we nsunwuram se mepese yetimi wo papa ne nsem so wie na wo hwe ha se nso a wo say businesses that produce for export should be supported with markets for their products. Those that produce for local consumption should also be protected from cheap imported products. As omo ye businesses wo krum hana companies ene wo ya ye gari ni ade na wo ya de me ye de ye kra konkofo amanso no was so on yetimi mo ebon ho ban ne mo ready market ene say ye betimi hu ni say ewie ya ye to de ade na kɔ sɛ na be mo ho betimi ha wo mo ɛna mo nso mo ya ade no wɔ Ghana ha sei omo ye Ghana made emi ye ankasa ye use no ye ankasa nso ye betimi aye den ye betimi ye o se ye bo mo ho ban de free de krade ba na ye de as ye similar na enso no efo no
nti eno no sa no very good point papa no point no reason no ni na good ne working nana wo ye den na ebia wo be udu ade ni bi wo kreti ade ni bi but ne fira bonten ba no hwe ye wa ase ne ekubie ekunfi wan juice say e whatever Calipo kra ebo from say ekunfi
when dem wo problem on pa say e ba ne say na ekunfi fruit juice no ebo ye den se ne Calipo
ebo den se Calipo ye ni na okruma say but who say to de bia obehu say ye fira amano ne ba no ne bo no ewo fom kra ese na ye wa ase nti manya market na enye protected ye companies akese no mo ye no mama ebi kwa amano ne no enye protected nti emre na wie du say e wo se sa
local companies in home
nti sa enema ne ye wo nema bi wo mpa na e ba oman mu a efiti na ekono sanka aban betumi ahwe sanka tumi ede nsa to so ebi mba Ghana biem because ye bi ha
papa na share cause was say a levy COVID levy should be abolished and also 10% tax on gross winnings should be abolished should be replaced with only winnings excess 5,000 the any edin komo we chiro say na at 5%. Say betas no ayade oho. See na o see yifuru okra say na odi video be di bia metew na emum na bia ye pejam ko be 5,000 odi 50 million de kona ene betew tax no kra so ye tie aye ntini bebre.
Ni bia tie say ye wo income tax.
Yes.
Wo ye den sika no wakwa branye adwumanya no aban betini de wom ni aba wo de no wo income no aban betini de efrim enu nti no se bibisa no aban ma nipa ne tie ase a wo tie a ha no but we no se ne akoye yete no o ma ye ne sache we say like aban ne bo mokro no but emra ni mu no e wo se yete income tax na ye kan say 5,000 ekro e na betin ko be 5,000 na be
wa bre papa na shase kasa na last wo say assembly members no ye nkebe ya ye mo allowance bosumi bia eye 2,000 Ghana cedis.
Assembly members no.
Yes.
Mahama aka na minim se.
Papa no was saying see ebe more allowance it should not be less than 2,000 Ghana cedis.
So.
Oh yes, was utiene reason was saying the enormity of their work cannot be overemphasized. They even get involved in fighting crime and drug abuse, in public health, education and etc. Enti ohe omadwuma omo ye na etimi bo enti ye mo musika
assembly members any unit committee members Ghana politics in flaming in such a way say minister MP and ye adwuma no no bitumi ka che the minister say o kwan ya MP meye ma MP nya kwan what you say MP enya kwan MP ne dia ne lobbying enu tina eye common fund na nka sampo no say ba NC MP ni sem na mom no e ko assembly honum dalet na omo de aye de omo de beye Nana tie. Won say asamna papa na kan won.
Radinya mkopon. Nana bia be kama.
Sani ade ni sitie no. Assembly members ni unit committees no, ejuma na eboso mo ye no. Ghana ha politics no. Maye hu ni saa. Maye hu om saa. Enu nti na kwete say amanfo embu assembly members no because wo mo ye ejuma ho. Unim say aban project bia ekoso no ne was supervise unit committee member and assembly members no but we no be wan say MP working tour or visitation tour enye na djuma I was say unit committee members and afa so no assembly members no and was omutumi eye nti omudjuma no omoye no ukọ you can say other countries are omudjuma ne so pa but ha no we don't give them and I say we don't recognize you almost say umudwuma no omoye no infa so wo so enu nti na behu assembly Ghana ampo nipa do say nebu assemblyman this will be awu eda bola so be bia na ekwa fra assemblyman say onkwa ba umudwuma e wo so omoye no yenye framework na kwakwa ete say ministers MP president omope na omoye adwuma ndi sanka emra no expose omo na yehu unit members and assembly members adwuma ye be so omedwuma no so eno no saa no ebe fata wo mu 2,000 Ghana cedis allowance say to me at the moment no but here we are your political framework no enhye da emma yenhunu nipa eye adwuma enu ntina light duma ne de ahye Akufo-Addo ne Mahama omo nya adwuma ECG
nana matie dase na se mabiribi no kra nyam ye dase ye be ko parliament na afeni akwakodi nkomo de fro yewra Dr. Kazio Atoforsen wa ogina ho a wa sha ase a wo kasa bia ekoso kama na ngofo de se me no mo kan me no mba ku akiro penti ye ko parliament na papa ne nsemo de tudwa no yakwe ni akwakotie bi. Okay.
2018 Act 978. The Speaker, I will also be seeking amendment to the Energy Sector Levies Act 2015, Act 899. I will be seeking amendment to the Ghana Cocoa Board Act, Act 1984, the PNDC Law 81, as amended. The Speaker, that's not all. I will also be seeking amendment to the earmark Funds Capping and Realignment Act 2017, Act 947, the Ghana Procurement Authority Act 2003, Act 663, Authority Act 2003, Act 663, as amended in Act 914. Speaker, I will be seeking amendment to the Ghana Education Trust Fund Act 2000, Act 581. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I will also be seeking amendment to the fiscal a comprehensive. Mr. Speaker, I forgot to add that I will also be seeking amendment to the Revenue Administration Act 2016, Act 915. So, Speaker, we remain committed to the pursuit of our 24-hour economic policy of stimulating economic growth and job creation. With you, Right Honourable Speaker, and my colleagues on both sides to reset the Ghana's economy through sound policy and structural reforms that will propel the country forward. So, Speaker, there comes a time in a nation's history when fundamental challenges must be confronted, difficult choices must be made, and a new course must be set for the future. For Ghana, the defining moment is now. Mr. Speaker, President John Dramani Mahama made a commitment to reset Ghana for jobs, accountability, prosperity. The Speaker, as captured in the NDC manifesto, in this regard, the theme of our budget is resetting the economy for Ghana we want. Right Honourable Speaker, the democratic principles we tirelessly fought for are being held. Our democracy has been consolidated with yet another peaceful transition of power. That notwithstanding, our youth face an uncertain future with growing unemployment and hopelessness. This suggests that the dividend of democracy, such as economic prosperity and social justice, remains elusive. Mr. Speaker, the choice before us as a country are clear. We can either continue on a path of self-destruction by not confronting the problems, or we can embark on a journey of fundamental reforms and transformation, one that resets our economic model, redefines our priorities, honors our social contract, and provides opportunity for all. Mr. Speaker, luckily, President Mahama has chosen the path of reform and transformation. He will fix the economy. He will restore hope and lead us to build the Ghana we want together. Right Honourable Speaker, this budget was preceded by the National Economic Dialogue on the theme Resetting Ghana, Building the Economy We Want Together, on the 3rd and the 4th of March 2025. Through this consensus-building dialogue, the people demanded a decisive action, real solution to the severe challenges that plagued us as a country. Mr. Speaker, the 2025 budget is a culmination of the true aspirations, felt needs, genuine desires of the people of Ghana, expressed through the engagement with diverse stakeholders. As part of our broad consultation also, ahead of the budget, we recently engaged traders at major trading centers, including the Mokola market, to listen to their concerns, gauge their expectations, and elicit their input. So, Speaker, the extensive consultation revealed that the overriding concern among Ghanaian traders and business community remains price and exchange rate stability. Apart from eroding their working capital, exchange rate volatilities makes effective business planning impossible and increase the cost of doing business. This budget outlines far-reaching measures which will be implemented in close collaboration with the Central Bank, the Bank of Ghana, to effectively and efficiently manage the exchange rate and inflation. Mr. Speaker, we also engage the youth of Ghana in a dialogue on social media as part of our new budget consultation. Mr. Speaker, during my engagement with the youth employed since June 2023 have not received their salaries. We will take urgent steps to remedy this situation immediately. Right Honorable Speaker, this conversation, Timber, on behalf of the then Minister of Finance, Timber, on behalf of the then Minister of Finance, the Honorable Seth Emmanuel Tepe, and led the passage of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 912, to deploy a robust public financial management system. Even though, Mr. Speaker, the Public Financial Management Act remains one of the best in the world, its poor implementation has rendered our public financial management systems weak, allowing for abuse and costly infraction. So, Speaker, President Mohamed's Speaker, accordingly, we will enforce the sanction regime, link contracting and public procurement to budgetary provisions in the medium-term expenditure framework, and seek, Mr. Speaker, we will comply with the public procurement process and link them to approved budget. We will also respect the limits of the appropriations as approved by Parliament. We will rationalize the management of the compensation of employees, including conducting headcount across the country. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention or my focus to the state of the Ghanaian economy as at 31st December 2025. December 2025. Right Honorable Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I now focus my attention on the state of the Ghanaian economy as at 31st December 2024. Mr. Speaker, hands on heart, we inherited an economy in deep crisis. Mr. Speaker, an economy hard hit with debt and beset by other fiscal challenges, such as large accumulation of MDRS, energy sector shortfalls, and financial sector payments. Mr. Speaker, weak commitment control and reckless public spending have reversed the progress made in fiscal consolidation, even under the IMF program that commenced in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the gains made under the IMF-supported program that was to achieve through the painful sacrifice of domestic bondholders, external creditors, and taxpayers, the economy remains in distress. Right Honorable Speaker, key performance indicators to be assessed by the IMF staff in the upcoming fourth review of the program scheduled for April 2025, such as the primary balance on commitment basis, inflation, social protection, and others, as at end 2024, are likely missed. Right Honorable Speaker, in addition, all structural benchmarks due by end December 2024 are also missed. Mr. Speaker, inflation worsened in the year 2024 from 23.2% in the year 2023 to 23.8% in 2024. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 end period inflation also exceeded the budget target of 15% by 8.8 percentage points and the IMF central target of 18% by 5.8 percentage points. Unfortunately, This has triggered a discussion with IMF under the Monetary Policy Consultation Clause. Right, Honorable Speaker, the primary balance on commitment basis worsened from a deficit of 0.2% of GDP in the year 2023 to a deficit of 3.9% in the year 2024. Mr. Speaker, the primary balance on commitment basis target for 2024 was a surplus of 0.5% of GDP. Sadly, the previous government recorded a deficit of 3.9 percentage point of GDP. This presents a slippage of a whopping 4.4 percentage points. Right, Honorable Speaker. At the end of December 2024, total central government arrests amounted to 67.5 billion Ghana cedis, representing 5.2% of GDP. The Speaker, with the road sector recording an arrest of 21 billion Ghana cedis. The Speaker, when I assumed office on the 23rd of January 2025, my office was inundated with requests for payment for many contractors and suppliers. To ascertain the total arrests and outstanding payment for all MDAs, the Ministry of Finance decided to formally request all MDAs on the 28th of January 2028 to submit information on all arrests and outstanding claims for validation. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance held a special hearing with the MDAs to validate the arrests that were submitted for payment. The response from the MDAs and the validation revealed that a staggering amount of 67.5 billion Ghana cedis is owed to government contractors and suppliers. Mr. Speaker, this consists of MDA's outstanding interim payment of invoices worth 49.2 billion and bank transfer advice at the Controller Accountant General worth 18.3 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, this 67 billion excludes 1.73 billion US dollars owed to independent power producers. This 67 billion also excludes 68 billion Ghana cedis owned by Electricity Company of Ghana to contractors. Mr. Speaker, this 67 billion US dollars also exclude the 32 billion owned by the Ghana Cocoa Board to contractors. And Mr. Speaker, this 67.5 billion also excludes the 5.75 billion owned by the Ghana Road Fund to various contractors. Right, Honorable Speaker, the Bank of Ghana is also seeking an amount of 53 billion Ghana cedis as bailout to be able to address their negative equity challenge that they face. Mr. Speaker, as part of the measures to address these mounting accumulated arrests, we have commissioned an audit of these arrest payments and guarantee value for money before a penny will be paid. Mr. Speaker, before a penny will be paid, we'll commit to do that arrest. Right, Honorable Speaker, in addition to the 67.5 billion cedis in arrests, the validation of 2024, with the road sector again alone accounting for 100 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, most of these contractors and most of these contracts were awarded without commencement certificate and authorization. Mr. Speaker, this is in blatant violation of the Public Financial Management Act 921. Right, Honorable Speaker, let me now update you on our debt service obligations. Mr. Speaker, apart from the huge arrests and bullet debt service and constrained fiscal financing options, currently, Mr. Speaker, the government's option to finance the budget is limited to only Treasury bill market following the debt restructuring. Program for the next 4 years is 150.3 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, simply put, the interest and principal payment that will be due for payment beginning now for the next 4 years is 150.3 billion Ghana cedis. This represents 11.6% of GDP in domestic debt service obligation alone. The Speaker, of this 150 billion US Ghana cedis, 73.3% of this 150 billion Ghana cedis is due for payment in the year 2027 and 2028. Right, Honorable Speaker, 2027 alone, the domestic debt service that will be falling due will be 57.6 billion, and 2028 will be made to call upon to pay 52.5 billion Ghana cedis. So, Speaker, the debt service obligation of 2027 and 2028 are major harms. These harms are cancerous and pose significant risks to the economy of Ghana. But, Mr. Speaker, touch wood, we shall fix it. We shall fix it. Mr. Speaker, our debt service obligation of this financial year is equally burdensome with significant harms. February, we were called upon to pay 9.9 billion. July, we'll be paying 6.2 billion, and August, we'll be paying 10.1 billion, all this year. Right Honorable Speaker, the fiscal challenges are further compounded by the significant short-term treasury bill that we also inherited. So, Speaker, these obligations, totaling about 111.1 billion Ghana cedis, requires rollover week in, week out, placing additional pressure on cash flows and liquidity requirements. Mr. Speaker, beyond the domestic maturities, Ghana faces significant external debt service obligations for the next 4 years. In the next 4 years, will be made to call upon to pay 8.7 billion US dollars, representing 10.9 billion, 10.9% of GDP, with heavy concentration again in the year 2027 and 2028. Again, Mr. Speaker, 55% of this external debt service will be due in the year 2027 and 2028. Right Honorable Speaker, in the year 2027, we'll be made to pay 2.5 billion US dollars, and 2028, we'll have to again pay 2.4 billion US dollars. Right Honorable Speaker, it seems the debt restructuring undertaken by the previous administration was designed to make 2027 and 2028 debt repayment heavy. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how come we sat and allowed that design to happen. Mr. Speaker, that is cancerous, but I can assure you we will fix it. Mr. Speaker, in spite of all this upcoming domestic and external debt service obligation, no buffers were built to cushion this unprecedented debt service burden. Mr. Speaker, as of 7 January 2025, the debt service reserve account, the sinking fund in dollar, has a balance of 64,000 US dollars. Mr. Speaker, when we were leaving office, we left behind 319 million US dollars in that same account. Mr. Speaker, the debt service reserve CD account had an amount of 143 million Ghana cedis. Right Honorable Speaker, when we were leaving office, the balance was 430 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, I now move you to stalled project. Mr. Speaker, due to the bilateral creditors' debt restructuring that is ongoing, undertaken by previous administration, a staggering number of 55 projects have been halted. Mr. Speaker, this leaves a massive amount of 3 billion Ghana US dollars in undisbursed loans and about $300 million in outstanding interim payment certificates, IPCs. Some of these projects include the famous Ifeanyi Kwanta Hospital, the KJTIA Market Phase 2, the Bolgatanga Boko Pomakrom Road, and the Tema Aflawa Road project. Delayed payment and demobilization from site could result in cost overruns of over 1.1 billion US dollars. Right Honorable Speaker, the IMF supported program imposed an annual disbursement ceiling of $250 million for all bilateral loans that are being restructured. This constraint means that it will take a minimum of 12 years to complete all of this stalled program. So, Speaker, unfortunately, as a result of the debt restructuring, all this stalled program, working with the IMF, will take a minimum of 12 years if we decide to go business as usual. We'll be engaging in the coming days to resolve this challenge. Speaker, I now take you to the famous energy sector fiscal risk. Mr. Speaker, The increase in energy sector financing shortfall is posing significant risk to the Ghanaian economy. In the year 2024, the Ministry of Finance supported the energy sector with payment of about 20.8 billion Ghana cedis. These resources could have been used for job creation and other development programs, like roads, schools, and hospitals, if the sector inefficiencies were resolved. Mr. Speaker, a recent exercise conducted by the Energy Sector Financing Modeling Team under the Energy Sector Recovery Program, ESRP, revealed that the business-as-usual energy sector financing shortfall has increased significantly to about 35 billion Ghana cedis for the year 2025 alone, even after spending in excess of 20 billion cedis in the year 2024. Right, Honorable Speaker, more importantly, the shortfall for the period 2023 to 2026 has been estimated to be about 140 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, this amount is 20 times more than the allocation for goods and services for all MDAs in the year 2025. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the energy sector shortfalls, which relate to current invoices that are largely unpaid legacy arrears due to the independent power producers. Mr. Speaker, the legacy arrears stood at $1.73 billion as at end 2024. Right, Honorable Speaker, the cocoa sector, which has long been the backbone of the Ghanaian economy, is sadly on its knees, owing to gross mismanagement. Mr. Speaker, the sector faces declining output and financing challenges, characterized by unsustainable debt, rollover cocoa contract risk, and quasi-fiscal expenditures, including cocoa roads, which, Mr. Speaker, is a non-core function of the Ghana Cocoa Board. Right, Honorable Speaker, cocoa production has dropped by nearly 50% over the past 3 years. In the year 2023-2024 crop season, Cocoa Board was unable to supply 330,000 tons of cocoa to meet its contractual obligation. This sharply decline has affected the finances of Ghana Cocoa Board. This undersupply has been rolled over for subsequent years for the new administration to pay. Mr. Speaker, these 2023 to 2024 forward sales contracts, locked in at lower prices than the current market rates, have resulted in revenue losses of about $840 million for both Ghana Cocoa Board and the impoverished cocoa farmer. Right, Honorable Speaker, the rollout cocoa contract has resulted in a loss of $495 million for the year 2025 alone. Mr. Speaker, these are the risks in relation to the market price differentials and, as a result, costs causing the smuggling that we see with Ghana Cocoa Board. Mr. Speaker, Cocoa Board outstanding debt amount to 32 billion Ghana cedis, of which 11.92 billion is due to be paid in the year 2025. Outstanding cocoa road contracts reached 21 billion Ghana cedis, approximately $1.3 billion in the year 2024, of which only 4.4 billion has been accounted for in Cocoa Board's finances for the year 2025. Mr. Speaker, the financial sector still struggles even after spending 30.3 billion in the financial sector cleanup exercise by end 2024. This includes 26.9 billion Ghana cedis after spending this amount in the banking sector. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, the financial sector is still struggling, and the financial sector will require 10.45 billion Ghana cedis to address the financial sector legacy issues and emerging risk. In addition, Mr. Speaker, an amount of 2.2 billion Ghana cedis is required to fully capitalize the National Investment Bank and the Agricultural Development Bank of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, I will also update the House on the fiscal performance for the year 2024. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal performance in the year 2024 was characterized by improved revenue collection, but with significant expenditure overruns. In addition, large arrests were accumulated over the period. Mr. Speaker, in summary, the provisional data shows the following. 1. Primary balance on commitment basis, the key fiscal anchor of the IMF program, worsened from a deficit of 0.2% of GDP at the end of 2023 to a deficit of 3.9% of GDP at the end of the year 2024. This is 4.4 percentage points worse than the target surplus of 0.5% of GDP. Sadly, Mr. Speaker. On cash basis, Mr. Speaker, the primary balance was a deficit of 1.2% of GDP against a target of 0.6% of GDP, representing a 100% deviation. Mr. Speaker, the overall fiscal balance on commitment basis for 2024 was a deficit of 7.9% of GDP against a target of 4.2% of GDP, while the overall fiscal balance on cash basis was a deficit of 5.2% of GDP against a target of 5.3% of GDP. Total revenue and grants amounted to 186.6 billion Ghana cedis, or 15.9% of GDP, 5.3% above the revised target of 177.2 billion Ghana cedis, or 17.4% of GDP. The performance was mainly driven by higher than programmed oil and gas receipts and higher non-oil tax revenue collection. Total expenditure on commitment basis, including discrepancies, amounted to 279.2 billion, or 23.7% of GDP. This is 27.1% above the budget provisions of the year 2024, Mr. Speaker. The primary balance on commitment basis, including discrepancies, amounted to 232.4 billion, or 19.8% of GDP. This is 35.3% above the target of 171.7 billion, or 16.8% of GDP. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, all expenditure lines exceeded their respective targets for the period, except for interest payments, goods and service, and other expenditures. Right Honorable Speaker, the discrepancies for the year 2024 being unclassified expenditure was 3.8 billion Ghana cedis as compared to 12.9 billion Ghana cedis in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, at the end of December 2024, provisional data indicate that gross central government and guaranteed debt was 726.7 billion from 610 billion in 2023. This represents 61.8% of GDP in 2024, compared to 68.7% in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, it is instructive to note that the debt to GDP ratio and the dollar component of our debt that has come down, that has reduced, is as a result of the 37% haircut on principal of Eurobond debt under the debt restructure. Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that. Mr. Speaker, Right Honorable Speaker, it is instructive to note that the debt to GDP that has reduced is as a result of the 37% haircut on principal and interest that were given to Eurobond bondholders. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that the government commenced the debt restructuring program in the year 2022 to restore debt sustainability and economic stability. As of now, the restructuring process is approximately 93% completed. The remaining 7% relate to debt of $2.7 billion owed to commercial creditors. We are committed to completing the remaining debt restructuring as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, real sector development in the year 2024. Right Honorable Speaker, provisional 2024 GDP statistics published by the Ghana Statistical Service on the 10th of March 2025 shows that overall real GDP growth increase. Mr. Speaker, at the end of increased to 5.7% in the year 2024. Mr. Speaker, I take that again. Mr. Speaker, provisional 2024 GDP statistics published by the Ghana Statistical Service on the 10th of March 2025 show that overall GDP growth grew by 5.7% of GDP in the year 2027, compared to the growth rate of 3.1% recorded over the same period. Mr. Speaker, the key driver of this growth was largely coming from gold mine. Mr. Speaker, including Galamsey. Including Galamsey. Mr. Speaker, Galamsey growth cannot be sustainable. Non-oil GDP growth. Mr. Speaker, the non-oil GDP grew by 0.6% in the year 2024, compared with the growth rate of 3.6% recorded in 2023. Mr. Speaker, the gross international reserves increased to a stock position of $8.98 billion at the end of 2024, and was enough to cover 4 months of imports, exceeding the target of a floor of 3 months of import cover. At the end of 2024, the currency had depreciated by 19.2% against the US dollars, 17.8% against the British pound, Mr. Speaker, and it had depreciated by 13.7% against the euro. Mr. Speaker, Right Honourable Speaker, it is what it is. The state of our economy is troubling, but we will fix it. Mr. Speaker, touch wood, we will fix it. But Mr. Speaker, it will require some sacrifices, truthfulness, transparency, and discipline. We will take strong measures to confront the situation head on. Mr. Speaker, the sacrifice must come from all stakeholders, beginning with the government. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the President appreciates this and has led the charge by significantly downsizing his government from the Elephant 88 to the Umbrella 60. Mr. Speaker, he has also reduced the number of his government ministries from the Elephant 30 to the Umbrella 23. Mr. Speaker, as part of the contribution to the resetting agenda, organized labor has followed suit by working with government and employers association to agree on a modest 10% increase in base pay and minimum wage for the year 2025. Right Honourable Speaker, on behalf of His Excellency the President, I would like to express my profound gratitude to organized labor and employers. Mr. Speaker, ordinary Ghanaians have also sacrificed by enduring the negative impact of severe currency depreciation since 2022. Hyperinflation, high food inflation, principal and interest haircuts, soaring interest rates, among others. Mr. Speaker, it is now time for the people's representative, the members of parliament, and the judiciary to also follow suit. I would like to call on all other stakeholders, including the business community, faith-based organizations, academia, and civil society to support this national call. So, Speaker, our immediate task is to reset our nation, to restore good governance, reduce the excruciating suffering of our people, and set our country on a trajectory of economic transformation. So, Speaker, our vision is to build a prosperous and a democratic state, anchored on the principles of freedom and justice, providing equal opportunities for all. So, Speaker, through this vision, we will work together to build the Ghana we want. Right Honourable Speaker, the resetting agenda will be anchored on the following. 1. Restoring hope in our democracy, renewing trust in public officials, and helping every Ghanaian attain their full potential. Offering a trusted hand to the vulnerable, particularly women and youth, and creating a new Ghana for coming generations. And finally, stimulating demand by patronizing made in Ghana goods under the 24-hour economy. Mr. Speaker, today I came to this chamber with made in Ghana bag, signifying, Mr. Speaker, with made in Ghana bag, Mr. Speaker, I would like to first present, Mr. Speaker, they don't know that in Ghana we sew suit. Right, Honorable Speaker, I would like to first present the government's immediate and strong measures to address the current challenges we are confronted with, followed by the medium-term vision, policy objectives and targets. Right, Honorable Speaker, consistent with Section 14 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 911, the fiscal policy objectives of this government is to support the economic transformation agenda to ensure the macroeconomic stability of the country within the macroeconomic and fiscal framework. More specifically, the fiscal policy objectives of the government include the following: rationalizing government expenditure and eliminating wasteful expenditures, optimizing domestic revenue mobilization through broadening of tax base, increased non-tax revenue collection, adopting enhanced tax compliance measures, and modernizing the tax administration through digital technology. Mr. Speaker, we will also increase the share of domestic expenditure to spur economic growth and job creation. We'll be reducing public debt to sustainable levels and adopting prudent debt management practice to support debt sustainability. Reducing the fiscal deficit progressively in accordance with the amended Fiscal Responsibility Act to promote fiscal and debt sustainability. And Mr. Speaker, restoring confidence in the Ghana economy. Right, Honorable Speaker, our approach will be to foster economic growth, accelerate job creation, reduce inflation, and stabilize the cedi. To achieve this, it is crucial that we establish the macroeconomic stability and ensure debt sustainability. Mr. Speaker, we are confident that by prioritizing these fundamental elements, we can cultivate an environment where individuals can prosper and businesses can thrive in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, Ghanaians through the recent National Economic Dialogue have expressed a clear desire for fiscal deficit and public debt to be reduced through cuts in government spending rather than through only tax measures. We wholeheartedly agree, Mr. Speaker, going forward, we will tailor our expenditure to align with our fiscal realities. After all, whoever pays off their debt gets rich. So, Speaker, we are poised to implement a three-pronged approach to achieve our objective, beginning with this budget immediately. First will be to recalibrate the fiscal adjustment, and we believe that by prioritizing spending-led fiscal adjustment can initiate a positive cycle. Fiscal adjustment can initiate a positive cycle in a way that first, it will help lower inflation and curb depreciation of the cedi. Secondly, it will lessen government reliance on borrowing, which in turn will reduce the crowding out of private sector and lower interest rates. Lastly, this approach will ease the strain on monetary policy, allowing the central bank some greater flexibility to reduce monetary policy rates, ultimately resulting in lower bank and lending rates. Mr. Speaker, the second approach will be to deliver shock therapy. Mr. Speaker, we are implementing a form of shock therapy to the economy by making significant spending cuts this year. thereby reducing the government financing needs and front-loading fiscal adjustment. This is the down payment for our policy credibility and credit worthiness. Right Honorable Speaker, our third approach will be to restore fiscal responsibility. By moving forward, we will enhance public financial management by empowering ministers to effectively manage their budget on their own, ensuring strict compliance with the commencement certificate. Mr. Speaker, we'll be passing and enforcing a revised Fiscal Responsibility Act, and finally, we will enforce the sanction regime for non-compliance of the Public Financial Management Act. Mr. Speaker, in pursuit of the overarching macroeconomic objectives, the following macroeconomic targets have been set for the year 2025. Overall real GDP growth of at least 4% of GDP. So, Speaker, not less non-oil real GDP growth of at least 4.8% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, end period inflation rate of 11.9%. So, Speaker, primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus of 1.5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, gross international reserves, including oil funds and encumbered assets, to cover not more than a minimum of 3 months of import. Mr. Speaker, to address inflation, government will implement a number of measures to complement the Bank of Ghana and monetary authorities. Mr. Speaker, the measures to stabilize the exchange rate include the following. We will be establishing the Ghana Gold Board to enhance the generation of accumulation of forex to support the stability of the Ghana cedi. The Bank of Ghana will continue to implement its FX forward auction to support the stability of the Ghana cedi. Government's strong fiscal consolidation through the reduction in public sector spending and the fiscal deficit will reduce the pressure on the exchange rate. Mr. Speaker, our import substitution drive under the 24-hour economy involving domestic production of key products originally imported will reduce imports and related FX requirements, boding well for FX stability. Right Honorable Speaker, we are addressing the inflation problems through a number of measures, including the following. First, specific interventions, including the Agriculture for Economic Transformational Agenda, is expected to increase food production and reduce food inflation. The government will implement policies that target items with large weight in the CPI basket, such as transportation and utility, to reduce their prices. Mr. Speaker, our aggressive fiscal consolidation drive aimed at reducing the fiscal deficit and borrowing will contribute significantly to reducing inflationary pressures. Right Honorable Speaker, our strategy to improve exchange rate stability will reduce imported inflation and fuel prices. And Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Ghana will maintain an appropriate monetary policy stance and use its liquidity management interventions to support the disinflation process. Right Honorable Speaker, to achieve our expenditure-led fiscal consolidation objectives, we will implement the following measures. Mr. Speaker, I now take you to our expenditure measures. Mr. Speaker, the following expenditure measures will be implemented in 2025 and the medium term to support fiscal consolidation agenda. First, we will conduct a comprehensive audit to validate the quantum of arrests and commitment as of 31st December 2024. Mr. Speaker, the mandatory use of blanket purchase order to capture multi-year commitment contracts in line with our medium-term expenditure ceilings will be implemented. We will amend the Public Procurement Act to provide for an independent value for money office to scrutinize government procurement. Mr. Speaker, we will also work with Parliament to amend the Public Procurement Act to make commencement certificate and budgetary provision a prerequisite for all procurement that will be paid by the central government. Mr. Speaker, we will fully integrate GANEPS and GIFMIS to ensure that only MDA's projects and purchase orders that have approved budget and allotment can obtain procurement approvals. Mr. Speaker, we will operationalize the compliance desk at the Ministry of Finance to monitor reports on commitment and arrest accumulation. Mr. Speaker, aside that, we will publish a PFM league table for compliance purposes. We will strictly enforce sanctions under the sections 96 to 98 of the Public Financial Management Act for breaches of the PFM Act, specifically those that relate to arrest accumulation and commitment control. Right, Honorable Speaker, we will cut waste and we will cut it very deep. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, we have selected expenditure items including the Ghana KASE, the USTAT, one district, one factory for complete elimination. Mr. Speaker, we will reassign the functions of development authorities such as Coastal Development Authority, the Northern Development Authority, the Middle Belt Development Authority to the district assemblies and do away with the development authorities. So, Speaker, we will amend the Petroleum Revenue Management Act to allocate all ABFA resources for infrastructure use, not for goods and services, but for infrastructure use. So, Speaker, the National Health Insurance will receive full allocation under the earmarked funds capping and realignment act. So, Speaker, the road fund will receive full allocation under the earmarked fund. Right, Honorable Speaker, we'll be amending the Mineral Income and Investment Fund Act to ensure that 80% and Investment Fund Act to ensure that 80% of the royalties originally maintained by MIF is transferred to the Consolidated Fund for Infrastructure Development. Right, Honorable Speaker, we will strengthen social protection, academic fee policy for all first-year students in public tertiary institutions under the No Fee Stress Initiative. The Speaker, it also includes the free tertiary education for persons with disability, free primary health care, the Ghana Medical Trust Care, otherwise known as Mahama Care, and free sanitary pads for schoolgirls. Mr. Speaker, for schoolgirls. Mr. Speaker, to address the energy sector challenges, including reducing the quantum of large energy sector challenges, including reducing the quantum of large energy sector shortfalls, the following energy sector recovery program interventions will be implemented this year. First, Mr. Speaker, ECG and NEDCO will implement a number of measures, including metering and implementation of private sector participation. Mr. Speaker, we will also implement the liquid fuel to gas swap through an increase in N-gas supply from 60 mmSC per day to 100 mmSC to take advantage of cheaper gas prices and others. Mr. Speaker, we will complete the IPP capacity renegotiation to generate some savings through negotiated lower fixed capacity charges and variable O&M charges. Mr. Speaker, as agreed with the IMF by the previous administration, we will implement the following ESRP measures to achieve the structural benchmark of the IMF program. Mr. Speaker, PURC will continue to implement the quarterly tariff adjustment to reflect changes in inflation, exchange rate, and generation mix. Mr. Speaker, PURC will also undertake a major tariff adjustment which will be due in fourth to reflect the increased prices of natural gas as well as the changes in the supply mix. Mr. Speaker, the subsidy on weighted average cost of gas granted to some ceramic companies through the discounted industrial development tariff will be reversed. Mr. Speaker, I now take you to the revenue measures. Mr. Speaker, in proposing some revenue measures to the IMF requirement. Mr. Speaker, this measures is inconsistent with our commitment under the IMF-supported program to observe a non-oil tax revenue effort of 0.6% point of GDP annually as part of the measures to improve domestic revenue mobilization and achieve our debt sustainability target over the medium term. Right, Honorable Speaker. Despite our commitment to increase the non-oil tax revenue by 0.6%, we have programmed the following nuisance taxes for removal in line with our manifesto promise. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on winning from lottery, otherwise known as the betting tax. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the electronic transfer levy, e-levy, of 1%. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on betting. We will abolish the electronic transfer levy, e-levy of 1%. We will abolish the emission levy, otherwise as in Wusie tax. We will abolish the VAT on motor vehicle insurance policy. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 1.5% withholding tax on unprocessed gold by small-scale miners. Mr. Speaker, the removal of these taxes will ease the burden on households and improve their disposable income. Right, Honorable Speaker, the removal of these taxes will ease the burden on households and improve their disposable incomes. In addition, it will support business growth and improve tax compliance. Mr. Speaker, Right, Honorable Speaker, the tax refund account has been abused in recent years. In the last 8 years, a study revealed that 29.1 billion Ghana cedis had accrued to the tax refund account, with only 12.5 billion Ghana cedis, representing 43% of the total accrued amount, being used for tax refund purposes. Mr. Speaker, the study also revealed that 16.6 billion Ghana cedis, representing 57% of the total amount accumulated in the tax refund account, was misapplied. Mr. Speaker, which is a total violation of the Revenue Administration Act, Act 915, and the Public Financial Management Act. Instructively, Mr. Speaker, there were virtually no tax refund arrests over the period. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, we are reducing the current tax refund ceiling by 2 percentage points from 6% to 4% of total revenue, as defined in Section 69 of the Revenue Administration Act, Act 915. Mr. Speaker, by reducing the ceiling on the tax refund from 6% to 4%, Right, Honorable Speaker, we have saved the taxpayer 3.8 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, this amount is enough to close the revenue shortfalls from the removal of the e-levy and the betting levy. Mr. Speaker, the e-levy would have accrued 1.9 billion Ghana cedis, and the betting tax would have accrued 180 million. The two put together is just above 2 billion Ghana cedis. By reducing the tax refund account from 6 to 4, it is enough to remove this tax, and the savings will be provided to take care of social interventions. Mr. Speaker, already we have saved 3.8 billion cedis for 2025 alone from one source, and this is enough to close the gap from the taxes we have removed today. Mr. Speaker, to address the concerns from well-meaning Ghanaians on how we are going to close the revenue shortfalls as a result of the removal of the selected taxes, the answer is that we have stopped the bleeding. We have stopped the bleeding. Mr. Speaker, accordingly, with this budget, we will amend the Revenue Administration Act 2016, Act 915. This measure will improve the tax revenue, net of tax refund, by 2%, representing 0.3% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, in line with government policy, the 2025 minimum wage, recently negotiated with the National Tripartite Committee, will be zero rated. This is consistent with our resolve to protect the poor and the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, again, without increasing the levy, we will also review the Energy Sector Levies Act to consolidate the energy debt recovery, the Energy Sector Recovery Levy, and the Sanitation and Pollution Levy into one levy and use the proceeds to cater for energy sector shortfalls and service the inherited debt service obligation. Mr. Speaker, the reset has just begun. Right, Honorable Speaker, the rest of the energy sector levies, including the Road Fund Levy, Energy Fund Levy, Price Stabilization and Recovery Levy, Public Lighting Levy, and National Electrification Levy, will remain to support the achievement of their intended objectives. Right, Honorable Speaker, Ghana has not sufficiently capitalized on the benefits of its extractive sector to generate revenue to support development and diversification. We have failed to leverage our natural wealth by capturing its rent and channeling it towards productive infrastructure and human capital. Natural resource rent, which is the difference between the revenue of a commodity and the average cost of producing that commodity, is about 14% of GDP in the case of Ghana. However, Mr. Speaker, revenue from extractive industry is around 1.5% of GDP only. This is because, as a country, we have failed to fully capture the economic rent of our natural resources. Mr. Speaker, whereas global gold prices have seen some significant increase in recent times, Ghana has not been able to take full advantage of the development. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing to increase the Growth and Sustainability Levy from 1% on gross production of mining companies to 3% to enable the nation to have its fair share of the windfall. Mr. Speaker, we also propose to extend the sunset clause to 2028. Mr. Speaker, we also propose to extend the sunset clause of the special import levy to 2028. Mr. Speaker, Ghanaians and this Honorable House will recall that road tolls on public roads were zero rated in the year 2022. Demand for construction and improvement of roads infrastructure continues to increase, even as substantial arrests and claims in the road sector remains. Right, Honorable Speaker, while the annual average collection from road tolls have not been significant compared to its potential, the existing zero-rated policy for raising enough revenue from tolls to road construction for road compared to its potential, the existing zero-rated policy for road tolls has increased the situation and dimmed the prospect of raising enough revenue. We also strengthen the legal and regulatory regime for non-tax revenue and enforce the framework to improve service delivery. This will be achieved through the introduction of an overarching non-tax revenue legislation, amendment of existing relevant laws, and the development of a national non-tax revenue strategy and policy. Mr. Speaker, as part of the reforms to improve other non-tax revenue streams, government will explore the operationalization of a regulatory framework for collection, management, and reporting of property rates consistent with our medium-term revenue strategy 2024 to 2027 and the Local Government Act. So, Speaker, we believe that the local authorities must be given the opportunity to collect their own property rates. Mr. Speaker, the current compliance rate for SMEs and personal income tax is below 30%, which is extremely low. Government will embark on an aggressive and sustained tax education campaign in the next 2 to 3 years to ensure improved compliance and tax revenue mobilization. We will also institute a quarterly dialogue on tax issues among the Ghana Revenue Authority, Ministry of Finance, and the business community to ensure that issues affecting businesses are addressed promptly. Mr. Speaker, I now take you to VAT reforms, VAT reforms. Right Honorable Speaker, we commit to the people of Ghana and this House, the business community, that we will undertake a comprehensive value-added tax reform this year. Mr. Speaker, with the aim to review the current distortions and cascading structure of the value-added tax regime. Ghana's effective rate, VAT rate, is about 22%. This is obviously because the 2.5% Get Fund levy, the National Health Insurance levy of 2.5%, and the COVID levy are well added to the base for a final determination of what is due for VAT purposes. Mr. Speaker, aside the high VAT rate, businesses are not permitted by law to claim their input VAT for NHIL, Get Fund, and COVID levy, compounding the burden on households. Right Honorable Speaker, our VAT regime has been distorted and rendered inefficient. It combines both VAT and sales tax principles with a flat rate, standard rate, and levies. We have requested for technical assistance from the Fiscal Affairs Department of the IMF on VAT reforms. It is expected that the IMF mission will commence in April 2025. The recommendations from the Technical Assistance Mission are expected to inform our reform. Mr. Speaker, ahead of the IMF Technical Assistance Mission, I will inaugurate a VAT reform task force to hold broad consultation with key stakeholders for their input. Mr. Speaker, the parameters for VAT reform will be to complete, is for them to complete this year. Mr. Speaker, the parameters will include the following. 1, abolishing the COVID levy. Mr. Speaker, reversing the decoupling of Get Fund and NHIL VAT from VAT. Mr. Speaker, reducing the effective VAT rate for households and businesses. Reversing the VAT flat rate regime and upwardly adjusting the VAT registration threshold to exempt micro and small businesses from the collection of VAT. Mr. Speaker, we will also improve compliance through public education and awareness. Mr. Speaker, I now take you to revenue mobilization and resource allocation. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grant for 2025 is projected at 223.8 billion Ghana cedis, or 17.2% of GDP, up from 186.5 billion, or 17.4% of GDP. The projection is underpinned by non-oil revenue measures, which are expected to yield at least 0.6% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure on commitment basis for 2025 has been programmed at 269.1 billion, representing 20.7% of GDP, down from 279.2 billion, which is 26% of GDP in the year 2024. Primary expenditure on commitment basis is projected at 204.7 billion Ghana cedis, representing 15.8% of GDP, which is a significant decline from 232.4 billion, representing 21.7% of GDP in the year 2024. Mr. Speaker, based on the resource allocation from 2025 fiscal year, the total appropriations for the year ending 31st December 2025 is 290,971,212,435 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, budget financing. Right, Honorable Speaker. Based on the estimate for total revenue and grant and total expenditure, the projected overall balance on commitment basis is a deficit of 43.8 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 3.1% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance on commitment basis is a surplus of 20.3 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 1.5% of GDP. On cash basis, Mr. Speaker, overall balance is a deficit of 56.9 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 4.1% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance on cash basis is again a surplus of 7.3 billion, equivalent to 0.5% of GDP. Right, Honorable Speaker, the cash deficit of 56.9 billion is expected to be financed from both foreign and domestic sources. The total foreign net financing will amount to 21.4 billion Ghana cedis. Foreign financing will include a provision for financing from IMF ECF program disbursed of 720 billion Ghana cedis and the World Bank Development Policy operations of 600 million Ghana cedis. The residual net domestic financing will amount to 36.9 billion, representing 65% of total financing for 2025. This is expected to be sourced from the issuance of debt at the short end of the domestic market and opening of the domestic market. Mr. Speaker, the government will take steps to reopen the domestic bond market to extend the maturity profile. The reopening will be executed cautiously to establish large-size benchmark bonds that will enhance market liquidity. Right, Honorable Speaker, further is to reduce the risk on debt portfolio of government, and we will build cash buffers to support effective implementation of the liability management strategy. Mr. Speaker, this will help smoothing the redemption profile and mitigate refinancing risk associated with Ghana's debt portfolio. Mr. Speaker, the government in 2025 and the medium term will implement liability management operations to manage the risk embedded in the Eurobond debt profile. Right, Honorable Speaker, beginning 2025, we will commence the operationalization of Section 37 to Section 44 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, we will be building sufficient buffers in the sinking fund as a landmark reform to manage our public debt. Right, Honorable Speaker, I'm pleased to report to the House that following our proactive fiscal management strategy, in our engagement with the market, this management strategy has yielded sufficient dividend. Mr. Speaker, on the 7th of January 2025, the NDC government inherited a 91-day Treasury bill rate of 28.19%. Mr. Speaker, just 2 months into this administration, we have successfully reduced this rate to 17.72% as at last Friday. Mr. Speaker, this represents a reduction of over 10%. In other words, 1,047 basis points in just 2 months. Mr. Speaker, similarly, on the 7th January 2024, we inherited a 182-day Treasury bill rate at 28.92%. We have again successfully reduced that rate to 18.97% as at Friday, 7th March 2025. This represents a reduction of 995 basis points in only 2 months. Mr. Speaker, again, on the 7th of January 2025, we inherited a 364-day Treasury bill rate of 30.15%. We have successfully reduced this rate to 19.93% as at Friday, 7th March 2025. Mr. Speaker, this represents a reduction point in just 2 months. Mr. Speaker, on average, rates have fallen by over 1,000 basis points. And ultimately, the following. Mr. Speaker, the 24-hour economy aimed at stimulating economic growth by creating an enabling environment for businesses and institutions to operate 24/7 in 3 shifts of 8 hours each to boost production, promote productivity, and generate well-paying jobs. We will be presenting the policy to Parliament in due course for consideration. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Act, the GIPC Act, and other enabling legislations will be reviewed to support the 24-hour economy policy. Right Honourable Speaker, we will roll out the implementation of the $10 billion Big Push policy for strategic infrastructure development to open up the country and drive sustainable economic growth. Right Honourable Speaker, the Ghana Gold Board will be established in the course of the year and as soon as possible. So, Speaker, we will stabilize the Ghana cedi and provide stability to the macroeconomy. We will implement an economic transformational agenda underpinned by structural reforms anchored on promoting modernized agriculture, agribusiness, and value addition for import substitution, export, and job creation. Mr. Speaker, we will complement monetary policy with fiscal and real sector policies to reduce inflation. Food inflation will be reduced through the implementation of the Agriculture for Economic Transformation agenda anchored on our 24-hour economy. Right Honourable Speaker, we will undertake key structural reforms to support inclusive economic growth, fiscal and debt sustainability, sound public financial management, efficient public service delivery, and good governance. Mr. Speaker, we will restructure the Bank of Ghana to strengthen its independence and operationalize to drive Made in Ghana agenda to promote production and consumption of Made in Ghana goods. Right Honourable Speaker, to demonstrate this agenda, as I said, I came to this House with a presentation of a bag proudly made in Ghana by Horseman. Mr. Speaker, this should be encouraged. Right Honourable Speaker, beginning this year, we will formalize the export of Ghanaian labor to other countries. We will ensure a structured and beneficial system for Ghanaian workers seeking employment abroad and create safer legal pathway for them to work in foreign countries whilst protecting their rights and welfare. Mr. Speaker, this will also reduce the benefits of remittance and boost foreign exchange earnings. Mr. Speaker, I now take you to how these resources will be allocated in the year 2025. Mr. Speaker, we will provide a cedi equivalent of $279 million as a revolving fund for the Ghana Gold Board to be able to purchase and export at least 3 tons of gold per week from small-scale miners. Mr. Speaker, we have allocated 13.85 billion Ghana cedis for Big Push projects. Mr. Speaker, we have allocated 13.85 billion Ghana cedis for the Big Push program. Mr. Speaker, an amount of 499.8 million Ghana cedis has been allocated for the
Kinti abusia Yewura Finance Minister Dr. KASE3 ana okase na mfidie nti mfidie na tum kama bibi abe kama nti nana wabobɔ nneɛma so na ebre no nti yehwe na yefa ne kran nti ohwa Yewura Finance Minister kasam yenhwe na yemo enema bi tofa enfama abusuafo se na ba mbetimi atin komoni biase na enwumre mu no yenkase mu no di aka no so yetimi de abanti we 2025 budget akoma bosika Yewura John Dramani Mahama na mamuo no a wo ba bebu ni sisi na afimu no se de wabɔ na konhoma ene nneoma wo bɛyɛ ana wo bobɔ so de akire yen entie bia makonhoma na meyeye no me de wei taku ebeto wei mede taku anasa sempo anso bekwa kwahye ha meyi wei de afiri ha ebia nkane no na medidi 3 times a day minidi 3 times a day bio meye ni se eno no ode aba na ebia wo kan me hu se me pia bonte bi ma hyase attack me se na what adent no wasi we will na nkwankwa yese yaye esane se wo bae no wonyanyeye enti we ye de ode agu nkrata so a sikasem fam no obeye amana bo oman no ene wo bobo so enti busumi nsia chi anasa media budget review no June July omo ba de omaye no ene oba be bobo so e de a kire ye ti se de enti so hwe enkoma ye die anasa woni ye die a omo jirem se 24-hour economy policy no omo de beba parliament na mrashe dwa na timi atwe suntonto na budget na nkasa centered as was resetting the economy for Ghana we want and as resetting the economy for the Ghana we want see ehwe ni ensika sem no yetimi adani muo sane be Ghana na ye na epeyensa betimi aka ene ni centered daso na yewra aye finance minister kasa wasanso aka wase omba behwe na wona ye form adwum so monkoye pharmacist ewo asopiti ahodo enim na ye ntu omoka no omu nanso betimi etu omoka na eye public procurement process kwen fa so eto nioma kwen wo so otimi fa so no omso betimi ede so pepepe na enhye ne de doso sanso eno de todwa wo chem se Bank of Ghana ehwe se bese 5 billion Ghana cedis no ombetimi ahwe na ekabia babato ombetimi ate ede afiri ho domestic debt service no so no yese emfinhia miense ede animu no ebetimi akwa 150 billion Ghana cedis a oka ede akire ye na obayen external debt nso echirim se ebetimi ahete anasa service no next 4 years ebetimi akwa kogina 8.7 billion and also oka ho asem na na minim sa contractor for de no wo ho a contractor for ne de no no chem say road contractors ban no edo moka a tese nya asem kuma
na wo kire se de di kan wo kire mu se aban no ede eye ECG car like a da ECG hu se ECG so ma contractors we dwuma mo ye eno no 67.5 billion cedis eno no ECG contractors eye dwuma ECG no e ka aban ede wo mo no na wo san eba road contractors no so eno no ye 100 billion cedis 100 billion cedis eno ne sika eye aban betumi ahwe na wode ama
okay and na ohwe ye debt restructuring na ye no nso a your finance minister chim say ye 93% completed na yes akakra no man ya ka ye dia ye adwen si yes akra niema mu ahwe dia kon ya aka no atimi agina ye sanso ana abani chim say afiwe free SHS budget a ye di wura msikere bebo ho ka 3.5 billion Ghana cedis 3.5 billion Ghana cedis sika abana se ode bebo ho ka sanso ana abana ti atwa sika 499.8 million Ghana cedis first year students edema tertiary no omonso yan unsa abana ka se wo mu ko university no first year for no first semester ibetua de amomo enti sika aban be ekwa kotua sika wa yi ato de kwa kotua sika no 499.8 million Ghana cedis ana afi free SHS sika aban de bebo ho ka 3.5 billion Ghana cedis eno so ene de efiri mu eba wo ha sei na finance minister ka so asanso kiremu se e-levy electronic transaction levy betting tax ana afenso di loto nso akakra na ye tewo no emission levy dodo na afense nwusie tuo sa etuo yi amabobo oboso no abani kiremu se obeyi ede efiri ho pacho obeyi ede efiri ho wanya se wayi ede efiri ho mpacho ye ntie niye die ntie wo ka ne sa ne se enya de a mprempre no watimi aye esa ne se wo so otimi hwede gu nkrata so de ba parliament mamra se bedwa no etwinso ntonto no mugi tumansana ababa yese ye yidi efiri ho jabani kiremu se obehwe amie yi e-levy no ede efiri ho a eno nso ewo ho ntie ne bet tax no nso no ade ye ba bi e de afiri no nso mu na eye agenda 111 Ghana KASE you start program no ade aban foforo echirim se obetwam wase we will this government will eliminate is will be the free wa agenda 111 project ni nyade a mesi agenda 111 one district one factory no enya de beto aso Ghana KASE ye yi de free ho you start no so ye yi e de free wa na so mbe yi e de free ho sanso na school feeding program no so no CC ya tum e de free 120 pesos ade akwa gina 2 Ghana cedis no so very a good move and as a step in the right direction. You say na ye can want some saying can 3 cities. But CC and ye nya 3 cities na etimi akwa kogina 2 Ghana cedis a eno so de ebo mu amane e wa ha sei enonom. Na wo hwe ensam na edoso pa na te say ye kan ho ensam anka kran so sanso ane ye ba behwe ma ye energy sector no so ka ye de mpemfo som de nneoma begu akwama ye betimi eyini na ede afri ho na okay na o hwe ye total budget appropriation na afiwe no eye 290.97 billion say ye 2 eno no nti hwema me say ye 2 ana me hu bibia ntimi nkoma okay enti total budget appropriation a budget no de bo ho ka eye anasa afu ye budget aye o Ghana aye 290.7 billion Ghana cedis na a teacher for training allowances sika ban say ye mfantu o moka CCA no ma moji teacher training allowances no aye 203 million Ghana cedis ana ban so allocate anasa wo de wapede ato say teacher trainees na ka bi akam no ye mfantu ya mfanfiri ho nti na eno ho nso de firi ho eba nti ensam ne de edoso a emu bia na ye hwe ni mu eye e-levy covid tax emission levy sa etuo bi a na efiri se nya nenei abahofra me anya ne ntie se obehwe na watwre agunkrata so de akwakoma mra sebedwa no ama o matimi ahwom betwam ade afiri ho enti we are expecting say right from here no best next 2 weeks no on shia e-levy betting tax no we will not see them again and then
Jidi say no be depend
on could do parliament
like say abasa no on be debate
yes
debate we are
anti you the emphasis be na kakre di enim ye ma me ma time na
bet ni we nim so be gina ensama ne wakane dawson ne ye be ko parliament ye be gia to mu ntem no na abehye mrem no ene ebe ye winti no no isi ano there is even the possibility say one share bet levy no any e-levy no one wina no ebetumi akona si akranza na yetwam
nti net by name mo no wo fi a fa so otirim se CCA die ye ntwam
wo ka wo mrahye wo fie nemu mrahye bedwafo engine to mu
nti we ye meye
we ye nyoma aban NDC aban wo tia binja space wo ye
yes
tine komra
kwa se bo se dada na
tino se wo mu gitumu a na afi no ni na ahyase se ye ejuma na wo kasa ina so no won ka bibia ye benye se sky ye interest school fa ne kwa ene sky bia etro bi obetwetwam ni ma bi omode eba foforo ina no akosombo nana o se allocation of 242.5 million Ghana cedis to support victims of Akosombo Dam spillage.
Okay.
Akosombo Dam no. Spillage na ba hono nsuo na ebie na ache ekobunka manfo faso no. Aban se wo de sika ye 242.5 million and wo de akoma wo mo se ne ba ya wo mo betumi aheha wo fi se ye kase so no kopin wo framantem beebi a ye nana dam no any we your friend say
okay we are breaking enkukwo nkete no aban atwa sika 1.5 billion say yemfa nkwose enkukwo nkete ni mu a chese no mahu say omu bose wo ho we de uti de ya enkukwo nkete no asem ne baaye no ana chese dom kese no ani age a omu bose pa se mahama beye wo kan ye nso awaye 1.5 billion Ghana cedis ene ne watwa say eba no yekua yonsem
and other agriculture
yes
programs.
enti the ultimate focus na nkasa wo enkokon kitenkete program ni ma yeba behwe poultry farming na ama ye nkokon kitenkete a obeyen wo afiefiem ne enkokra poultry nkokɔ yi abrofo di mfa ma ya bɔ won pane no yankase betima ye nkokɔ wo krum ha dodo na ye di dodo na so ha na 100 million a year for national coders program wona ye beto my ICT mu the coding ni ade no eno nso ye 100 million say ye de bakwa akohyem na ma mo nso am ward district assembly no nso common fund no abansi watwa sika 7.51 billion Ghana cedis say enkonkohyem na anase yemfa nkonkoto district assembly common fund ni ma ye betiche mu nkakra ama assembly bia nso atime enya ne de enti na just afi we ni de emu beye de sanis oh de emu beye de isane say
na we budget reading no
for say budget statement and what
budget statement and the possibility mpo say this budget you know e bimpo ebe call within the next 4 years of their government you know high
eno de unsa budget
from where I'm sitting no me who budget
okay,
no
assembly members
100 million for monthly allowance for assembly members nanaba allocation of 100 million
and we assembly members
there say busumi bi assembly members organ ha ina ne kabo mu a omusika ne be 100 million
100 million Ghana cedis ana aba na twa to say
yewia ne achiche mu
obi abenya nti eno no ana women's development bank yo kan ho asem so na aba na twa sika boten 51.3 million Ghana cedis say a man women development bank no yemfa nkonkohyem enti wutiem na ya assembly member me pa chewe nei si yagitum se budget ni yagitum si yedidi dwuma na oho ni yagitum a say diewura JDM apensu yi wonso benya monthly salary kakra
enumre yebe share assembly members for ni na dodo
yes
na ya multiply 100 million cedis no e de amount
ne ya chichemu
because
say betimi ya do bia betimi
there's a district bi wo ha assembly members no omo yesen
and the kaswa say ye 13 enti 13
assembly members 13 e wo ha mo
ewuti senya is
scan
so na nso no ye chichemu anya hwekura oba unim say ye
so obi abunya 1000 cedis
ye na de encha meka sa ne say omu yentu omo ka bosome omo ko assembly meeting and yemo omo se dabi yemo omo se 200 Ghana cedis sitting allowance afimu no mtimi ko be 3 times and tina 3 times no ko na assembly member 200 Ghana afimu na wonya 600 cedis this wo wie ne term 4 years no ko ani ama na yi article 71 o si ntwamu mo si afre ne say oh nkofu article 71 office would see me refi odomu wie de ex gracia aha ni amomo ex gracia ba si no wo hwe na se yagitum nko ade a ye behwe assembly member bia boso obenya kakra e de apodwe enti ana meka no said okasa resetting resetting the economy for the Ghana we want to know. I believe say eno an ode aba esan say ye reset ya na assembly members no wasi etimi reset ma wo mu yes enti ebi etimi aka o maye 3.5 billion Ghana cedis e de free SHS mu teachers for allowances aka ma ye twa sika de koma wo mu ana afen so we shouldn't forget say we promise free tertiary for first year students no and also allocate sika ye de kwa koma omu nyina enti na yes no so no enti 100 million for assembly members enwumre mene assembly members ni bibedi nkomo wa afidie so no omo so ya hwe hawa omutimi je ensemi na ebre ne ko
life worship
eba enti on record me pa cho se bibia to ye a levy betting tax engusie to emission levy ana covid-19 levy ye betwam e de afiri ho free SHS enya de a ye twam na emom ye hyemu kena 3.5 billion ye abana twase yemfa nkonko she free SHS mu assembly members ye ba betua omoka e wa hase bibia toto yi a
ensem ye fine enti no sanka wo na mabia Ghana for betumi de voice mail tie obi afa so ama wo
be 5 minutes ya okay ebia na wutie me
ana be pick course mum
okay mama fa time ni oba me pick be 2 or 3 course say enioma ya bobɔ so yi say aban ne say wo ba be ye sika wodi ahyem say free SHS enyina yie assembly members aye ba betua wo moka free tertiary first year student a wotwe sika se yemfa nkotua university for school fees ne fama wo mo afen so ebibi te say eye emission levy levy better say ya yidi afri ho teacher training allowance a wotwe sika se yemfa nkonkoma eka ye de enkokon nketenkete wotwe sika se yemfa nhyem ne yankase enye nkokɔ a Ghana so yebetimi awe Ghana nkokɔ no me pick be 2 or 3 course na wadwen kire wait media ba 0342 292779 0342 292779 and 0509 762 000 0509 762 000 eno number na 0342 292 779 se bia na hawa witimi frɛ okay mama nkwa say emra hello, good morning. Good afternoon, Kafra.
Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Me ba chon so dey na pese o chewa dwende fa ho. Okay, when ti me anyina so wokọ. Ofra no wallo radio no radio set no wallo no dia ma me ye be so de sisi ne ye ko. Okay, ti okay.
Producers na aba.
Okay, o dey ma ye hwe.
Enumere ye tenasia.
And you remember Brewum, bedin komo.
Okay. But entino na mpesanka open number bia. O metumi voice me na faso.
Voice notes e dey afaso.
Man mo newsroom na ma no. Wo hu. Mo newsroom na ma no.
Okay.
Na wo mutumi fa bibi emfaso se na bia.
Ye wie bibi video timi to frame. Okay, nti newsroom line no wo wi a ye be frɛ na ya je voice note no wa kire ho. Ye 0537 501959 0537 501959 0537 501959 what the ane say what the dumabribi na
WhatsApp message and say o ye voicemail anka ye pe
o
ye recording kakra bi won so wadwen kira wo fa budget ya abetudwen no ibi entinya comment dum na anka safoma me na chese bibi entimi enko kama beto aso me na sports for na se o maboa ye mpa ma bibi entimi akoso na ena de me ne